Hey there, in this video I'll show you how you can take your washed out photos and transform them in a few easy steps. Here's our starting point. After I've applied some adjustment layers, we'll end up with this effect. The colours are much improved and the contrast is also better. Let's get started. The first thing I want to fix is the angle of this image. You'll notice it's slightly crooked. The right side is going up and that kind of ruins it for me. Every time you shoot straight lines, a bit of adjusting in Photoshop is always welcomed. Grab the crop tool and let's move to the options bar. Click this icon to straighten it. Now let's drag across this stone wall. The preview is showing us what's up and I'm happy with that. It's not a major change, but it's a small improvement. Next, I'll add a curves adjustment layer. Let's see what we can do in this panel. If you're an experienced Photoshop user or you want full control, you may want to adjust your contrast manually. In simple terms, increasing contrast means you have to darken your shadows and lighten your highlights. That's exactly what the curves adjustment layer allows you to do. The bottom left side represents your shadows, while the top right side controls your highlights. This gives you fantastic control over them. In case you're interested, this is called a histogram, and this chart shows we have some shadows going on here, we have a dip in midtones, which is not ideal, but the highlights are very strong, hence this spike. So you can say this is not a balanced shot just by looking at its histogram. If we take this bottom part and drag it down slightly, our darker parts are immediately going to pop. That's what we're going for. We could use this adjustment layer to lighten our shadows in case we had too many dark spots. Notice that as I'm dragging it up, the entire curve changes, which means the entire image is getting affected. What's nice is that we can add a secondary point by clicking somewhere on this line. Now we get more control over our shadows. Of course, this doesn't look good because we want the complete opposite. If you want to revert to your initial settings, you could use this third icon here. But you can also delete these points by using the delete key on your keyboard. To make sure you're targeting the correct one, make sure it's filled with white. This one is not selected and it's hollow. Delete, and that's that. The more points you set, the more control you're going to have, but you may want to keep it simple. We have some presets available in this drop-down. Here, I'm interested in Increase Contrast. You can see we're getting an S shape here and it finished what I started. It moved this curve down so we can get more contrast into our image. It also slightly adjusted the top part. But say this is too much. Well, we have other options in this drop-down. For example, Medium Contrast, and that works a bit better. But remember, we can control this layer's opacity. So I'll revert to Increase Contrast, and I'll take it down to about 70%. Okay, this is good to go. Next, we'll add a Vibrance adjustment layer. If you've ever played around with it, you might be unsure about how these are different from one another. They both seem to increase saturation, but here's the idea. The saturation slider will affect everything on the canvas in an equal and linear fashion. It targets all your colours and it increases or decreases them as you move right and left. Vibrance, on the other hand, focuses more on areas that aren't as saturated. This means it can target muted areas and give them life. In this example, if we take Vibrance all the way up to 100%, you'll notice the city skyline is really improved, while her jacket and hair, while fairly strong, are not over the top. Let me bring it back to 0. If we repeat the process with the saturation slider, yes, we'll still get stronger colours for our skyline, but the girl is oversaturated. Same thing goes for this rock wall. So in this case, I'd lower it to about 20% and I'd ramp up this Vibrance slider to about 60% or so. This is the look we're going for. And that's our result. If you want to see the before and after shot, use F12 to revert back to the original image state. Now use Ctrl-Z and this will show you all our edits. Quite a big improvement. I hope you found this interesting. You have this image attached, so experiment with it. Have fun!